everyone, and welcome to another episode of Irreplaceable Truths. I'm Dr. G. I'm very lucky today because I have a mentee of mine that used to be, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to make him sound bad.
You can go ahead and make it sound bad. That's fine.
He's just a little troubled.
Yeah.
This is Phil Snow. He owns the Professional Veterinary Assistant School.
Yeah, OC Veterinary Assistant School.
Oh, you switched the name on me.
Yep.
Orange County
Yes, sir.
Veterinary Assistant School. Man, I've known you, Phil, since before my first daughter was born.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, 20-something years, right? Yeah, I think like 2001, 2002 is when I went to Canyon. It's
Wow.
crazy, yeah.
Okay, so why don't you give us some history? Where were you coming from when you came to Canyon Animal Hospital in 2001?
Well, that's a good question. So I was, I'm originally from Massachusetts, and I got out here by way of the magnificent United States Navy, and my last station was Coronado, and I could not go back, right? And I don't even really go back to visit anymore. It was just so beautiful out here. So when I got out, I had a buddy that was from Massachusetts that lived out here in Laguna Beach, and I called him up. I was like, "Hey, man, I can't go back. I can't go back to that miserable environment. And can I stay with you?" And he's like, "Sure." And so then, as soon as I went up there, I was like, "Man, I got to find a job. I got to find something to do." And I went down to Canyon Animal Hospital, and I had asked if I could just volunteer there. I just wanted to stay busy while I was out. And the manager at the time was like, "It's okay. We'll pay you," right? And started out minimum wage working in the kennel. And that's where we met.
What was minimum wage back then in 2001?
I believe it was $6 an hour. Yeah, I don't know, $6.
Yeah, you can live in Laguna Beach for $6 an hour. Let me tell you, folks, this is a guy who could tell you that's the truth.
I'll tell you what, we lived in a beautiful place. We were right off of Thalia on the PCH side, and it was a one-bedroom, but we paid $1,300 a month back then, which is it's unheard of nowadays. It's crazy.
Oh, I bet you that place goes for $910.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
Right now.
Outrageous.
Wow. Okay, so you started 2001, and you still didn't really know what you wanted to do.
Sure.
What kept you there?
Well, that's a great question. So I have a story for that, right? So I remember being in the kennel, and it was, I don't know, I had only been there for a short period of time, and I remember we got this rescue dog in. It was a beagle. His name was Spot, and Spot was hit by a car, I believe, and he was staying with us at Canyon, and he had a degloving on his rear leg, and I remember it was like this crazy. I remember, obviously being completely shocked at looking at the injury. And then the surgery that you did was you took his leg and put it into his abdomen, and then let that skin heal around the degloving, and then removed it and closed it up, and then he had like a piece of his belly wrapped around his leg. It looked like he was wearing like Ugg boots, right? Looked like a furry Ugg boot or something like that. And I fell in love with the dog. I fell in love with the idea of medicine and surgery. I was just completely sucked in at that point with how cool everything was. And I kind of knew right then. I was like, man, I had never really thought about working in a field of medicine, but this is really cool. I think this is what I want to do.
And if the state board is listening, I did not put it in the abdomen. I put it in this. I put the foot. I made an incision and put it subcutaneously, and we sutured in there, and he did great. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't they use him because he learned how to walk on his front two legs?
It was the best thing ever. So he would walk on his front two legs because of the injuries, and he was just learned how to compensate. And then It was great when he came back in after he was all healed up. He would be running down the hallway, and then all of a sudden he would just go up on his two little front legs, and he would just walk. And people were like, "What the heck is that dog doing?" If you didn't know the history behind it, you thought it was just this weird dog doing handstands down the hallway. But yeah, he was walking on his two front legs. It was crazy.
And I remember Beagle Rescue then used him as Children's Hospital Orange County therapy dog.
Yeah,
Best dog, because the kids would totally forget about why they were at Children's Hospital Orange County and just laugh their butt off because Spot would be walking around on two legs down the hallway.
Spot was so awesome, and I had an opportunity to adopt him, and I didn't. And then I ended up adopting another beagle. Bernie was like this 80-pound beagle when we got him. Worst dog ever. Man, that dog got into so much stuff. And I always think back about, maybe I probably should have grabbed Spot. Spot was probably the way to go.
I mean, your first dog was a beagle, though.
Yeah.
I mean, not a golden, not a lab,
Yep.
not a Cavalier King Charles,
Yeah, right.
of which we had plenty. We saw plenty of. But no, let me go beagle.
Yeah, right. That dog was in so much trouble. I'll never forget. I had a few roommates at the time when I had Bernie, and they used to like leave the doors open and stuff like that, and Bernie used to get out. And I remember he would always walk, of all places, he'd walk right down the street to the animal shelter, and he would start like sniffing around the dumpsters, and then they would pick him up, and then they would call me, and I felt like I was bailing my kid out of jail. Like I'd go out there and I have to go walk through the administrative place, and then go walk through the kennel with all like the cages, and they're all barking and yelling at me and stuff, and I have to pick them out, pay for them, bail them out, God, I can't even tell you how many times that happened. I was on a first name basis without shelter. That was
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing was, I was the medical director at the time,
Yeah.
and I still am at Laguna Beach Animal Shelter. And, I just think it's very important for, my biggest concern, obviously, is early career vets.
Yeah.
And I could tell you there's nothing more rewarding than helping out rescue animals, shelter animals. I remember there was one fucking jackass doctor who said, "Why do you do so much for these shelter animals? They aren't paying a bill, right? They don't need that much help." And I was like, "You motherfucker, they need like 2 to 3 times more help."
Yeah.
Because they need to be placed.
Yeah, right. They're the ones that need the most help, right? Yeah, that's crazy.
But I digress. So then you continue at Canyon.
Yes.
So let's talk about because that was your main job, right?
Yeah.
So you went from kennel to assistant.
Yes. Yep. Kennel to assistant, and it took a little bit, right? And I always try to tell students my story, right? I think a lot of times we get people that come in and they're just like, okay, show me the secret handshake, right? What's the password to get into the treatment room? And, and then that's it. But there's like a lot that you have to go through, right? There's like just learning that has to take place. And then also, I think most importantly, you got to get the trust of the other assistants, technicians, and of course the trust of the doctor before you just go in there, right? And it was, I think, starting out in the kennel or reception, wherever, those entry-level positions, I think that's really the best place to be in the very beginning, right? You're not going to make any serious mistakes or anything like that, and you're going to see some really cool stuff, and they're just kind of be eased into a little bit more like stressful, right? And a little bit more, I don't want to say important positions, but you definitely are kind of playing with fire then at that point, right? So you don't want to just throw people right into that stuff. I think it could be a catastrophe.
So when you said building up trust and building up relationships, how important is looking at cultures of practices? For your students, for veterinary students, for early career vets, because that's the biggest problem, right? Your students, early career vets, they don't trust themselves that much, much more than, trying to build the trust of the others and build a professional identity.
Yes. So I just recently had this conversation with somebody that was they graduated and then got their license, and then they were suggesting that they weren't ready, right? That they didn't feel ready, and I really went into the idea, and this happened with me, and it happens with a lot of students that I talk to. It's almost like this imposter syndrome, right? Where you're like, man, yesterday before I took my test, I wasn't able to do all this stuff. Now I took my test, now I'm able to do all this stuff. And there's a lot of responsibility that's associated with it, and I think a lot of people get nervous and they're concerned that they're going to make a mistake, or that maybe they need more schooling or whatever. And I think a lot of people go through that, right? And I would imagine the vets go through it too as well. But definitely we see that with the technicians, and it goes away with time, right? It's just getting in, especially if you're starting a new job and you're newly licensed. I would imagine you're walking on eggshells a lot of the times, right? So the culture of a clinic is super important, especially if you're one of these newbies, right? You're just out of school. You definitely want to be in a place where it's conducive to learning, right? You got to have the doctors and technicians that are willing to train you, not just on the stuff that you went through in school, but I think as anyone in this field can tell you, what one practice does may not be what the next practice does. In fact, you may have doctors within the clinic that practice medicine one way, and then the other doctor practices it a completely different way. So you definitely got to be in a position where these people are willing to train you, right? And I think that asking those questions up front during the interview process is paramount, right? You definitely want to make sure that you are in a hospital that is willing to do a lot of training, right? There are going to be clinics out there that don't, and they are just, hey, you should know this, and it's sink or swim type situation. And of course, you've been around for a long time, you're going to be okay, but as a new person, you could imagine that struggle quite a bit.
The struggle's real. I mean,
it is.
I mean, because you look at a lot of your students come to you, 2 years out of high school, 1 year out of high school, 4 years out of high school.
Yeah, they're young. Yeah.
They're young. So basically the veterinarians are only about maybe 4 years ahead of them.
Yep.
So I'm sure their struggles are the same, and it's just as important to mentor a doctor as it is to mentor your reception, mentor your assistants, your newly licensed technicians, your technicians,
yeah,
kennel. There's a lot of things they got to learn, and it's more. My argument is it's more soft skills.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more on this, right? Absolutely. There is something about, I don't know, people that are hardworking, have good attitudes, respectful, right? That are good people, communicators. And I can teach anybody how to put a catheter in, right? I can teach anybody how to take x-rays, but you can't teach a lot of those soft skills. Those things are developed as personalities as they are obviously growing up, right? And it's if I could stress anything to anybody that's new, is you got to work on those things, and if you are a good person, right, and you are hardworking, then they're going to be willing to take a risk on you versus somebody who's completely closed off but maybe has a lot more technical competence. Because the person that you want to work with is is obviously the former there, but absolutely those soft skills are key. We really try to drive home how important it is to be just hardworking, right? Just stay busy, always be looking for the next thing, that type of stuff.
It's okay to
really
smile.
Key. Yeah,
it really is. It's really okay to smile. No one's going to hold that against you to actually enjoy your job.
Yeah.
Because I told everyone, I was like, being a veterinarian wasn't a job, it was a career.
Yeah.
We would have 12, 14-hour days, and I'd be like, oh, well, no, we never missed meals. Food was always a given. But I'm like, I haven't gone to the bathroom today. I haven't gone outside. I missed back then when you started, we really didn't text messaging, costs 36 cents
Yeah,
a
right.
text. But there was a lot that had to be done. But it was fun. I mean, back then, it was fun. What changes have you seen, in your opinion, since you started and where we are now?
What do you mean with how the hospitals are? Or?
The profession, the hospitals, whatever. What changes have you seen?
Man, I'm gonna sound like an old guy, right? And I would imagine this is something that everyone goes through, right? Each generation. I will say it, like a lot of the younger kids that are coming out, just like I was saying, just give me the magic, the secret handshake. What's the password, right? What do I just need to do? There isn't a lot of, I don't know, drive is the right word, but I definitely feel like a lot of the kids are more of instant gratification, right? Like, I have a question, give me the answer right now.
That's social media.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of that stuff, they aren't willing to go in and like do some of the work to find out the information. And I think there's a lot of value in that when you have your question, you can kind of answer it yourself, right? So I definitely see a lot more of that instant gratification type situations. I also have seen a huge shift in what I guess I would consider like loyalty to a clinic, right? I think when we grew up, it was you were going to work for anything, right? A manufacturing job, just a business in general, and you're giving your life up for that. You're going to stay there for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
You're the pensions and all that type of stuff. Now, these kids are they are going from one place to the next, and not only are they doing that, but I think one of the big things is we're seeing them switch professions a lot more than I think I would have anticipated in the back, well, at least back when we were growing up. So I think those were probably some of the biggest glaring differences that I can think of.
Well, the one thing that blows me away is looking at these new career vets that really haven't been anywhere long, and then all of a sudden they become a relief veterinarian.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking, you look at their CVs that you get off Rue or any of those types, and you're like, you only been out a year and a half.
Right.
What do you feel confident in? Now, don't get me wrong. There are veterinarians that come out of school that are pretty confident in themselves. They believe in what they do. They know what they're doing. But that's the minority.
Yeah, there's not a lot of real world experience there, right? And I think that's what a lot of clinics are looking for is like, yeah, obviously you need to have the school and the license and all that stuff, but what's your real world experience? Yeah.
So, what drove you to get your license?
Being in that clinic, right, and being at Canyon, I really knew pretty early on that, okay, I want to get into the treatment room. And once I was in there, I was like, okay, I want to get licensed, right? And I was lucky enough to have you guys, Canyon, pay for the school that I went to, and it was professional veterinary assistant school. So the same school that I'm a part of now was the school that I attended back in 2007 or something like that. But I always knew, like, right out the gate that I wanted to continue to advance at least up until the licensing, right? And I knew that the clinic was where I wanted to be at the time, and that was a big driving force into me getting licensed.
So, for all this people listening out there, you've been doing this a while. Are you still learning every day?
Oh man. Yes, right, absolutely. There's one thing that I definitely stress to any of our students, especially like when it comes down to, and they're in the fourth semester, and this kind of goes with what we were talking about before, that imposter syndrome. Like, it's not like you get your license and then you're done, right? You are constantly like barraged with new medications, new new techniques, right? New technology. Like there are all different types of new things that are coming out on a regular basis. Highly encourage anybody who comes out of school, get involved in your local, like regional, state associations, and then also the conferences, right? The conferences are such a big part of it too as well. Not only is it a requirement in California, obviously, for us to do CE, but it really is to stay up on the newest stuff and the newest just the newest things that are coming out. Those conferences are paramount. Now, and a lot of these associations have a lot of free CE that they do too as well, right? Like we're obviously part of SCVMA, right? They constantly have a lot of different CE that's out there. But I consider myself like a lifelong student, right? I've pretty much worked and gone to school, like my whole life, still in school right now, which is hilarious. But it's something that
I am too.
Yeah, right. What are we doing? This is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's stressful, but I love it. Right? It's a good stress. I enjoy like learning and also having all these other responsibilities too as well. But you got to stay on top of it, or otherwise this profession is just gonna pass you by. Right? It's gonna really pass you by.
So, what would you say to any student, veterinary or technician, that comes out and thinks that they're going to be perfect?
There's no way it's not going to happen, right? I think that I definitely drive this home with my students too as well, is that, look, everyone's going to make mistakes, right? My goal here is to make sure that you don't make the catastrophic mistakes, right? There are going to be things, just human nature, right? People are going to make errors, and it is okay, right? The biggest thing that I can give as advice to anybody is you got to learn from it, right? I don't care what happens. You don't want to make a mistake, not learn from it, and then continue to make the same type of mistake, right? That's where people are going to get in really big trouble. But everyone makes mistakes. It's okay. I think you just use it as a learning opportunity, and then you just carry on and make sure whatever it was doesn't happen again.
So if someone does make a mistake, what's the most important thing you tell them?
Yeah, that's a good question too. You got to fess up, own up immediately, right? There is, and we really drive this home in the very beginning of the program, and that is, like I give you an example of, I don't know, maybe you're cutting a mat, right, or something like that, and you nick the skin, right? What do you do? Do you ignore it? Do you try to glue it? There's all different things that people can do, but eventually it's probably going to be found out, right? And not that we're doing this as we don't want to get in trouble, but just as from a character standpoint, you make a mistake, you got to own up to it. Now, take that example, you make that little nick in the skin, we tell the doctor, right? Obviously, we learn that we don't want to use scissors like how we were using them with the mat. But, we take care of it. Maybe we give some antibiotics, they close the wound, we tell the owner, all that stuff. You don't tell them, maybe that thing turns into an abscess, right? And then that type of stuff. So anything that goes wrong, it's got to be communicated immediately, and you got to own up to it, right? I try to tell people not to ever displace the blame or place it on somebody else, right? If you did it, you did it. Own up to it. It's fine. Everyone makes mistakes. They're going to appreciate that and you owning it versus more of, well, I was really busy and so told me to do, like that type of stuff. Just take responsibility, right? That's the big thing.
So a lot of these veterinarians that we call shady, let's just say shady.
Okay.
What's the one value they're missing the most?
Like honesty, integrity, right? I think that really is the biggest thing. I think that as long as you are not trying to, pull the wool over people's eyes, right, and intentionally trying to misdirect them, I think that's one thing. But when there is actual intent out there to deceive or something like that, then that's where really big problems come into play.
Without naming names, have you ever known doctors that were like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, and not only do we know them, but like you also read about them too as well. Like there's all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on in this industry. I remember something that, I mean, it's not incredibly recent, but I remember COVID, right? I remember there was this doctor that was out there, and I remember seeing, I don't remember where I saw it, but they were taking advantage of the coronavirus vaccine by like highlighting the fact that they had coronavirus vaccines for dogs, and they were charging outrageous prices. They're just playing on the fear of people, right? And so here they are charging $150 for a corona vaccine or whatever. And obviously it's not COVID, right? And it's just, there's just stuff like that happens all the time. It's just outrageous, but it's just part of the human nature, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like those veterinarians that try to make a quick buck are going to get, karma's going to come back and bite them in the ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because karma is a legit thing in this profession too.
Yeah.
Those clients that are absolute nightmares to deal with, karma always seems to come and get them.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, funny story, I just remembered. This poor lady was so upset because my partner in crime diagnosed her puppy. It had bloody diarrhea, and he said it could possibly be parvo, but I think it turned out to be Giardia or coccidia. Remember how upset she was? What did she do?
I don't remember.
She drove her car right through the front.
Oh my God!
Front door.
That was that lady. That is, man, I will never forget that. That car goes through our front door. I run up there, and here's the lady. One of the pillar went through the front windshield.
She missed decapitating herself by like 4 inches.
Yeah, it was incredible. And then the puppy is under on the passenger seat. I help the lady out, and I go in and I get the puppy. And all of a sudden, what do I see? There's helicopters that are flying around. And you know, you ever watch the news, you know, cars going through buildings is like a big news thing. And I was like, here it is. This is my big break, right? Like, this is where it all happens. I'm going to be on the news. They're going to ask me all kinds of things, be like a hero.
So what'd you do? You grabbed the puppy right in the middle of the parking lot, look up at the helicopter, waving and smiling?
Yes.
Like, look at this moneymaker right here?
Yeah, this is my chance, finally, right? People are going to appreciate me for who I am. And all of a sudden, I saw the helicopters take off. They all took off. And I was like, what the hell is happening? And come to find out, it was the same day that old guy ran a whole bunch of people over in Santa Monica. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And so they had all just peeled off and then went up to Santa Monica, and I missed my big break.
I apologize for that. If you know, all these early career professionals,
yeah,
in veterinary medicine, I mean, there are some crazy stories, and you're not the only one that's been through it.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil and I have been there at 3 a.m. to do C-sections. Were you there that one time my partner in crime decided to use ketamine Valium to induce a bloodhound C-section at 3 a.m.?
Yeah, I believe so, right?
It took freaking 20 minutes to revive those puppies. They were so stoned.
Yeah, we were there for quite a while, yeah. But I do remember quite a few bloodhound C-sections, right?
Basset hound C-sections.
Bassets, yeah, lots of, yeah.
Beagle C-sections. Japanese chin C-sections.
Oh my gosh, the chins. That's right.
The chins. We were lucky, though. We didn't do that many bulldogs at the time.
Yeah.
Because there was a famous vet out in Riverside that was the bulldog veterinarian.
Yeah, Butchko.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
But now, before I retired, I was working with Road Dog Rescue, and I was seeing Frenchies everywhere.
Those Frenchies, man.
And I was doing about, 5, 6 soft pallets a week. I don't know how many stenotic nares. And where I'm going is, what do you have to say to an early career vet who says, oh my gosh, I could never do that?
You mean like like doing stenotic nary soft palate resections, or like working
Just
with?
any in the middle of the night C-sections.
Oh my God. Well, you know, that's a really good point, and I talk to a lot of managers and a lot of technicians and some doctors that are in the community, and they tell me that when they put ads out for vets, that they are like, "Hey, I'm gonna work 2 days. I don't do surgery, right? And I need $120,000 a year, right? Like just like outrageous demands." And at least from my experience, these vets that aren't going to do at least some procedures are not going to be making a ton of money for the clinic. There's just not a lot of revenue there. So if they're like associate veterinarians and you come in and you say that type of stuff, why hire them when you can have somebody else that's coming in that's willing to keep everything in-house rather than referring everything out to, to the specialists or what have you?
Well, the students you have in your school, how much experience do they have to have before they start?
Yeah, that's a that's a good question. So since we're alternate route, right? So we have all of our students need to be working, period, right? Full time in an animal hospital in order to go through our level 1, level 2 classes. We don't have any restrictions on how long they have to have been working, but if anyone doesn't know, the alternate route, you're required to have 2 years of full-time experience and education before you qualify to get your license. So we have people like that were myself that had worked for years and then went to school, and then we have people that are new, right? Mm-hmm. And they are working in an animal hospital for a short period of time, and then they'll go through the program. So we have people that have been working in the field for 20 years, and then we have people that have been working in the field for a few months, right? So there is a very wide range of students that we have.
But the point to drive home is that they must have at least 2 years full-time experience.
Oh, yeah.
For the program.
Yep.
What would you say if I told you that there is vet schools out there that require 0 experience before getting in, or only 100 hours?
Yeah, I think it's outrageous, right? We have a very, very like entry level program, something called our veterinary attendant program, and it's 12 weeks. This is geared for people that have no experience in the animal hospital, and it's short. They have about 78, 80 hours of internship that they do at a local animal hospital. The reason why I bring it up, like you can imagine, the students that come in are gung-ho a lot of the times. I want to work in the veterinary field. I want to work in medicine. I want to work at a veterinary clinic. And we go through some classes and we put them into their externships or internships, and they quickly realize that this is not the field for them, right? That, oh crap, this is not what I thought it was. Perhaps they are going to be better suited for working in things like shelters, maybe rescues, boarding facilities, like if they still want to work with animals, but working in a veterinary clinic is not for them. We have had several people come through the veterinary attendant program to get experience, then went on to vet school, right? Then go on to our other technician stuff, but then they went to vet school after. And they were grateful they did that, just because you got to know what you're getting into. I can only imagine going through 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of vet school, and realizing maybe halfway through, 3/4 of the way through vet school, that you don't want to do this. Like, that is a travesty, right? I think that would just be, just talk about a bummer, right?
I mean, and I think that's one of the biggest problems we have with attrition, is that the ones who do well are the ones that know what's waiting for them at the other side, right?
Yeah.
The ones, and don't get me wrong, there are veterinarians that do extremely well that had no experience prior, but a great majority come out and they're like, what the fuck is this?
What did I get myself into?
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest stressors you can think of that come with working in a veterinary hospital?
Well, I think there's quite a few, right? I think one of the biggest shocks for a lot of people coming into the profession, especially if they've had other office jobs and things like that before, you're on your feet all day, right? And you're skipping meals, you're skipping breaks, right? So I think that there's a big shock, especially people that are coming from like any corporate level jobs where it's everything's so scheduled. You have a lot of sick days that you can play with, right? I mean, especially as a vet, like you can't call out, right? Especially if it's just you. Like you are the reason that the business is staying afloat. So that type of stuff I think is quite a shock to a lot of people in the very beginning. I also think that dealing with life and death, right, is quite a stressor too as well. Some people are going to be better suited and can handle it a little bit more. We definitely have students that I think are doing great, and then they start getting involved in euthanasias, and they start having a real hard time with that concept and grasping it. I'll never forget, I had a student that came back, and I really liked her. She was awesome, and she had her, I think it was like her first or second shift at the animal hospital, and I was asking her how it went, and she was telling me that she was a part of her first euthanasia, and she started tearing up and also like kind of laughing at the same time. And I was like, oh, this has got to be a terrible story coming, right? And she said that they invited her in for euthanasia, and here she is during the process, and she starts like sobbing, and the owner was consoling her. She was like, it's okay, it's all right. So it's like the exact opposite of what you would really want to do. Now, was I worried about her? Absolutely, right? But just through kind of learning about how to deal with those types of stressors and really just exposure, she was fine, right? She did just great. But I definitely think that life and death stuff is can be pretty hard on quite a few people.
Well, the one thing that I mean, the amount of euthanasias that happen between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
It's outrageous.
Outrageous, right? And I remember one day, I think I did 5 euthanasias, but I also had 4 puppy exams.
Yeah.
And talking about an emotional roller coaster, right? And, when my partner retired, it was a hard day for me because I really looked at, his name was Dr. John Hamill, and truly an amazing man and what he did for the profession. And one of the main reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But he looked at me and he's like, you know what, Gersh? I am so happy I do not ever have to euthanize another animal. And at the time, I was like, dude, you're off your rocker.
Yeah.
What the? It got so bad for me.
Yeah.
Last summer before I retired. I would go outside and vomit before a euthanasia. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But then it finally caught up with me, and I actually talked to my therapist about it. And they're like, and they brought up the Buffalo Bills player that died on the field that they brought back to life and how it shocked the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, did you see those ER doctors on the field? They weren't shocked. They deal with that every day. They do CPR 8-10 times a day in emergency rooms. But eventually your body will just, that wall will break down and then it will hit you.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife's, who's still practicing full time, I can't even talk to her about euthanasias because it just triggers that in me. It was so bad. Not Marley and Me, but the movie, I think it was called Canine, that had the military guy and he had the dog and they wanted to euthanize the military dog. I couldn't even sit through that movie. I was there with my kids. I was like, oh, I'm going to go buy more popcorn. I couldn't even sit in there. I was sweating. Couldn't even talk about it.
Yeah.
Couldn't even watch it. So what do you think about clients? Are they a stressor?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, right? If you talk to anybody that's in the profession, they will tell you so, right? I will say during COVID, I had never seen so many happy technicians and assistants because everything was curbside, right? It was such a minimal amount of exposure to these guys. So yeah, right, absolutely. But at least in my experience, some of these clients that people complain about, they very well may be paying one or two people's whole entire salary for the year, right? And yeah, they might be a bit of a headache, and they might give some problems to the staff and stuff. But man, they sure do love their animals, and they'll do anything for them. So you take the good with the bad with the clients, right? And it goes back into what we were talking about earlier with the soft skill stuff, right? Like that stuff is so incredibly important. You got to be able to talk to people, and you got to be able to diffuse situations, right? It's very, very important. The whole communication aspect of it is paramount. I think a lot of the times, clients, especially when they're upset, there's just some unmet goal or some frustration or something like that, and perhaps they don't feel like they're being listened to or what have you. Just talking to these people and trying to get to the bottom of why it is that they're upset is so key, right? And you can not only diffuse the situation, but you can kind of come up with these types of win-win scenarios, right? Where so now they're leaving the clinic happy, right? Versus them leaving upset and going on Google reviews or Yelp or whatever, right?
Good segue, because that's where I was going. I think if you communicate and you're open and honest, integrity,
yeah,
you're not going to get that Google review. You're not going to get that Yelp review. And the problem is that these early career vets now, with their social media, they are so in tune to what people say about them that they see it immediately.
Yeah.
So what was your craziest client story you can remember?
Oh, boy.
You got to go through the Rolodex, right?
Yeah. I think the craziest one was we had a dog that passed away in the clinic, and the owner didn't know what she wanted to do with the body, right? And so she wasn't ready to cremate it or what have you, and she didn't know if she was going to bury it or whatever it was. And so she's like, I'm going to take it home, and then we'll come up with the decision afterwards, right?
And how long did that decision take?
Well, we hadn't heard from her in a few days, and so we were like, let's reach out to her. And so I had the the shortest straw to make that phone call, and she had told me that she wasn't sure what she wanted to do with the dog yet, but she had been sleeping with the dog in the bed for the last few days. And I remember my jaw just kind of dropped, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is like, what do you, like, I didn't even really quite grasp what she was really telling me, but I was like, the wheels start turning. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's been sleeping with this dead animal for a few days. And that was definitely on the top. And I mean, we could go down the line, but that was definitely one of the ones that come to mind first always.
Did you or did you not have a client talk to you about heroin use?
Heroin use? I don't remember. I definitely remember.
Or was that just the front desk?
I remember someone trying to offer to pay with OxyContin. I remember that one, right? Is that yeah, that was ironically one of the same person, I believe, right? That's crazy.
And that just, I mean, it's not politically correct to say this, but I remember I had a professor tell me, my senior year in vet school, about client communication. This is what I learned about client communication. Not everyone who owns an animal is crazy, but all crazy people own animals.
That is so true, right? I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Right? And the other thing that they told me was 3% of your clients are going to make you hate your job.
Yeah.
So would you agree you could easily figure out who the top 10 clients are in every practice if you're there long enough?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And those are the ones you really need to worry about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Because those ones that come in just want a freaking vaccine, just want to cause shit,
yeah.
complain about other veterinarians.
Yeah.
I mean, if a client comes in immediately coming in for a second opinion, instead of telling you what's going on, starts off the conversation complaining about the other veterinary hospital she was at or he was at, red flag.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What are some other red flags you can think of?
For clients, oh man.
Just to prepare people. They need to know. I mean, because no one sits down in school and tells them, you got to be careful. I mean, I'm hoping to have Bonnie Lutz on this because she's the attorney that protects. She writes all the articles called Covering Your Assets and basically is the attorney who defends all veterinarians across the country against state boards. And she comes up with all the red flags. The other one, this is my fur baby.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that's definitely a big one, right? Like maybe I don't have kids or I do have kids, but this is also my child, right? Like the elevation of the companion animal, right? Like up to that human status is, yeah, I don't know. That could be a red flag for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have any other ones to give out? Come on. You were there long enough.
I just think you can kind of tell, like, it's weird. Like, I would just kind of have a knack for figuring out who was going to be a difficult person. They definitely are way more overbearing, right? They want to be involved in every single minutia of the experience at the animal hospital. They perhaps don't want to be separated or from their animal, but to a fault. You know what I mean? I think none of us go into the hospital and we are okay with the animal going in the back. You're concerned about it, right? But you can just tell they're very overbearing. They also may try to. I think another red flag was people that are trying to persuade you into medical decisions. I think that is it would probably be a big one for me too as well, where I don't know, you're leaning in one direction and they're literally forcing you into the
Because Google told them that.
Yes, right, exactly. So they already have this preconceived notion about what their diagnosis is, and even though they may be wrong, they're going to hold it to that, right? So I think those overbearing personalities are red flags for me for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about mentoring.
Yeah.
And I'm a true believer in this. Do you think these early career vets can lean on these technicians and assistants that have been working in the field for 15, 20 years?
Yeah, I mean to an extent, right? And I did this too myself, right? We had hired some young vets, and I think that just like we were going before, right? You are new into the field, right? You're walking on eggshells about how you should be practicing or how the clinic practices medicine. Absolutely, I think that especially if the technician's somebody who's been there for a long period of time, and they have some questions about just the regular practice and some of their methods. Absolutely. Now, I want to be clear that that I don't think the technicians should be directing them on diagnostics and stuff like that. However, like there are going to be a ton of questions that the new vets are going to have just about like the inner workings of the hospital, and absolutely you should lean on them for that type of stuff. I think that there are going to be some questions that are obviously going to be more suited for your veterinarian companions, but a lot about just like the inner workings of the hospital and how things are done. Absolutely, I would lean on those technicians hard.
Right, because there are also technicians that will make an early career vet their life fucking miserable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Miserable. And that's something they need to look into. Like you have this overbearing tech that's been there, let's say 25 years, and God bless them, they've given their heart and soul to this practice. But they also do not make the best teachers or someone to lean on because they've already been doing it. And I think a lot of times older veterinarians, older technicians, they forget they were in their shoes at one point.
Man, I can't even so it's like an ongoing joke in my classes, right? Like we have students that come in and they're like, "Oh, I wish somebody would teach me more. I wish," and I'm like, hey, "Okay, please remember that All right. And then when you do get to that point and I call you up and I'm like, hey, I got somebody that needs you to intern or something like that, don't forget about it. And what do they all do? Nah, I don't think so, man. Don't send me the newbies, right?
Right.
And they don't want to get involved in the training aspect of it. They forget that they were there and they needed somebody to help them out. So I think there's a lot of value in if you are a technician or you're a vet and you want to help the new people, right? That it's you. The idea, at least for me, would be you want to elevate everyone in the practice and get everyone better, right? Everyone's job gets better like that too as well. It gets easier. So the training is so key, right? So key.
So when you have people that are new to the profession, I know everyone worries about work-life balance. And yes, I understand. I understand work-life balance. How do you explain to your students this is some of the things you need to do?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I kind of always had a problem with the idea of work-life balance, right? And what I mean by that is very rarely is it like completely even. There are going to be times when you need to lean in on more of personal life, and there's going to be times when you need to lean in more on your professional life. But you got to know what stage of your life you're in, right? Like for me, I've got 3 kids, and they require quite a bit of attention. They're really young, right? However,
Gosh darn it, fucking kids!
I fucking ruin everything, man. But they.
Hey, at least you still have your hair with 3 kids, dude.
I
I got 3 kids, and I'm baller than bald.
It's just the way I comb it.
It's just all the product you put in.
Yeah, but early on, God, when you're young, do it, right? Work hard, and if you're one of these people that are starting a new clinic or starting a new job, you better lean more into your professional life, right? And you got to get things up and going. But that's what I was saying. Like I can't imagine there's this perfect work-life balance. I just don't think it exists personally. I think that you're always kind of like on one way or the other, and you got to pay attention to what needs it the most, right? Like you might even think that your work-life balance is great, but then all of a sudden something happens in your personal life, right? And that's
called life.
Yeah, and that's going to require your attention, right? And professional life is going to falter. Now, if you're a new business owner, you can rest assured your personal life is going to be struggling quite a bit, right? You might be going out there putting in 60, 70-hour work weeks, but it's a new business, right? It's a decision that you kind of made, and you got to stick to it and get the thing up and running, and hopefully it pays off in the long run. But there's like this I have just never really agreed with this perfect symbiotic, like everything is
right.
in perfect harmony.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about early in your profession, give it 1,000%.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you can back off eventually.
Yeah.
As a business owner, I would rather someone say, hey, I'm cutting my hours down to 32 or 28 or 24 instead of calling in sick all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I mean, we are not afforded the luxury of being overstaffed very often in veterinary hospitals. So one person calls in, it's felt throughout the whole clinic usually.
Right, and one of the biggest complaints you hear by a lot of veterinarians is that I don't have the support staff.
Yeah.
I would love to do a lot more. I mean, I had Dr. Gassel in, and Dr. Gassel, he's an amazing surgeon.
Awesome.
If he's lucky, he does 1 procedure a day. Yeah.
Like one?
Because he's so understaffed.
No kidding. Yeah, it's
and the thing is, and it's not that he's not fried. He's not burnt out.
Yeah.
He loves this profession as much as I do, as much as you do. But he also has integrity.
Yeah.
And he knows, maybe I could squeeze 1 more in, but is that the right thing to do?
Yeah. That's good.
And I understand if like these younger career veterinarians are like, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable doing this procedure. I understand that.
Yeah.
That's different than saying, I don't do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
It's all about communication again,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It's all about honesty. It's all about just being, just those soft skills. I mean, so what do you do to teach emotional intelligence through your program?
well, we have like some classes that revolve around like conflict, right? Like that's a big one that we deal with, like client conflict, but also like conflict amongst the staff members, right? So I think
There's
that's
no conflict. There is no conflict amongst the staff. Everyone gets along perfectly at every hospital. I don't know where you've been. I don't know of any conflict at all.
Right.
I don't know of anyone having another employee sleeping on their roof when they get home.
It's outrageous. Yeah, but we go into the type of stuff where, as far as the emotional intelligence is concerned, right? We want to make sure that people have empathy when they're leaving, right? We want to make sure that people understand that you got to recognize other people's emotions, right? And then I also try to emphasize the fact that you can't control their emotions either, right?
But they need to control their own emotions.
Absolutely. So that's the big thing. We always tell them you can control what you can control, right? Your reactions, right? How you react to certain scenarios, you can control that. But how other people react, right? You can't control people that way. So we want them to kind of recognize when people are angry, frustrated, upset, like just those types of real raw emotions that can take place as far as the conflict is concerned in the clinic, and then how to really like diffuse those situations and communicate, right? And the big things that we focus on are just making sure that you have respect for people and you do some active listening, right? And try to get all information out about why somebody's upset. I think that's one of the other key concepts is that we want people to, when you sit down to the table and you're discussing whatever conflict, you want to give people ample opportunity to get it all out, right? You don't want to just sit there and wait to talk and fill the void, but get all information out. You can get all information out, and then you can kind of work together to come up with the solution. But it's really key, right? That just the open communication as far as trying to diffuse these crazy, not crazy, but just situations that go on.
Well, I think open communication is really a phenomenal take-home message. You can say too little, but you can never say too much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right. You want to get all. We have a couple of like practices, like they're just like activities that we do, and like part of it is, you give a couple people different scenarios, and the idea you have two different teams, and the whole idea is that if everyone comes up and they actually divulge all information that they have, you'll realize that there is a win-win situation involved in there. And it's just an activity, but it just kind of highlights the idea that if you go in there withholding information, or if you go in there and you try to deceive, how it's not going to work out the way that you want it to, right? It's going to be lose-win, like that type of situation. So we try to, put those things into place just to kind of get the idea in their heads that, yeah, I got to be honest. I got to be open, right? And if I do those things and I let other people be honest and open, we could, come up hopefully to some type of solution that, everyone's happy.
Okay, so what do you tell people? Because I learned finally that, and it took me a while, and I make sure I let people know this. It took me a while to realize that I'm not going to make everybody happy.
Shocker. It's unreal.
Well, the problem is because you look at, I'll go with early career vets. They've never been told no, right?
Yeah.
They probably got an undergrad, no problem, because they had good grades. Yeah. Then they probably got into vet school because, again, they had good grades. And they've never been rejected from anything.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of how I was, right? I had a 2.6 graduating high school, but because of swimming, I was able to go to whatever school I wanted to. Not Ivy League. I wouldn't go Ivy League. Because I knew I wanted to party and have fun.
Yeah, right.
But, and then I'm like, holy shit, I'm not going to be a professional swimmer, So then I realized I got to work at school. I did well in school, got into vet school. And, I just thought, oh, everyone just likes me. And I finally realized a lot of people can't handle my personality, which is loud, obnoxious, and I don't take a lot of stuff seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, when I finally figured out that I'm not going to make everybody happy, I didn't care about what they were saying about me on Yelp or Google reviews or any of that stuff. What do your students expect that everyone's going to like them? I know I can't be the only one who thought that way.
Yeah, I hope not, right? We definitely, I'll try to give us like some of my experiences. This definitely goes into some of these things with like the conflict and communication stressors and stuff like that. Going back to you can only control what you can control, right? And I think that if you have any type of issue with somebody or a conflict or anything like that, look back and think about what it was that you did or said, and if it aligns with like your values and it was, honest and you did it with integrity and stuff like that, you can't control people's reactions, right? So like if you are in the clinic and you give it your honest effort and you really do everything that you think is right for a patient and the client doesn't like it, that's on them. You know what I mean? And so, and you're right. You're not going to please everyone, right? Like everyone, you are going to have people that get upset, especially I would imagine for veterinarians, you are taking risks on diagnoses, right? And sometimes it doesn't work out and you're pushed into other directions. And
that's an educated risk?
Yeah, an educated risk.
Because if someone's just coming out and taking a risk, that's called negligence.
An educated risk. So they go in the direction that they think it should go in. And as long as you did it with what you thought was right at the time, like that's fine.
It's called practicing medicine. Practicing. No one's perfected medicine yet.
Not perfecting medicine.
We try to perfect medicine.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, I really think, going forward, I hope things change in the profession a bit. In your opinion, where do you see this profession right now?
The veterinary profession or like the technicians or
either, just the veterinary profession in general.
Well, I think
holistically.
Yeah, I'm worried about the new vets coming out. Just from what I don't have any experience with these newbies, but definitely from the managers that I'm talking about, that they don't really want to do a lot of procedures, or they have very specific demands about what they're not going to do. I worry about that as far as general practice is concerned.
So where do you think they got that from? Do you think they got that from school?
I don't know. I would imagine it's a combination of things that just the newer generation coming up, and I would imagine some of it comes from school too as well. I can't imagine that they are taught one specific thing in school, like, oh yeah, you're going to come out, but you don't need to do this type of stuff. I can't imagine that like being taught to them. Who knows? I could be wrong, but I think it's got to be a combination of just the way they're growing up, as well as some stuff they're learning in school too as well. It's got to be.
Because I talked about this with Dr. Gassel in a previous episode as well. It's like there are veterinarians now that won't even try to unblock a blocked tom.
Right.
Is there anything routine about a spay?
The routine, yes, right? But it's a major abdominal surgery, right?
Everyone say it's a routine spay, and I call bullshit.
Yeah, it's a crazy procedure, but is it something that the vets do all the time? Well, yeah, usually, right?
And do you agree it's easier to do on a 3-month-old puppy than it is a 120-pound lab that's been through 2 heat cycles?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, now if a new student's like, hey, I'm gonna refer this obese golden retriever to go get spayed, I'd be like, yes, please do.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because because the only time I would ever ruminate and go home and worry about stuff is when I would do like that big ass spay, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, damn it. Did I really? I think I like it enough.
Yeah, right.
Oh man. So Phil, it's been a pleasure, dude.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is
I'll
awesome.
have you back on. Trust me.
Please.
There are stories to be told.
Oh my God.
Lessons learned.
So many.
So many. If people want to get a hold of you for your program, where do they go?
Yeah, so OCVAS, OCVAS.com, right? We have 2 campuses. We got one in Garden Grove and one in Lake Forest. Go to the website. There's a number there. We're always looking for the big, at least our program, looking for assistants who have been working in the hospital for, some period of time that are looking to get licensed, right? That's our demographic of who we go after. So, any assistants that are looking to get licensed, come on over, right?
Well, do you have to get licensed?
Absolutely not, right? And this is something that I am very upfront with people when they come into the school. And there is not a lot of difference between an assistant and a licensed technician as far as what they're allowed to do, right? Like we can suture existing wounds, we can do casts and splints, right? We can extract teeth. There are some emergency type situations and procedures that we can do for animals that are coming in and that are crashing. But that's like it. Like everything else, like you don't need to be licensed to take x-rays. You don't need to be licensed to, do dentals. You don't need to be licensed to put in catheters or anything like that. Monitor anesthesia. But I think the license carries a lot of weight, right? They obviously get paid more, right? I think that's the big selling point. And any assistant that's been in the field for a long time comes to us to get licensed. They're really trying to just collect more hourly wage, right? But there's just not a ton of difference between the assistant and the technician as far as the skill sets are concerned, right? Or what they can do. The license suggests that you have a lot of know-how, at least, or I would like to say, like, why you're doing the things that you're doing. And I think that assistants are very good at knowing what to do, but not why they're doing it, right? And I think that's really the big separation that we see with the licensed technicians and and assistants.
Yeah. Well, Phil, it's been a pleasure. I say hello to your beautiful wife for me.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah.
Of which you met at Canyon.
I did. I sure did.
She was a client first,
Yep.
and then she came in,
Yep.
worked as a receptionist.
Hated me.
Hated you.
That's right. Asked to be work separate shifts.
It's crazy.
It is
Well,
crazy.
I met my wife at the interview at vet school. So veterinary medicine, I mean, obviously rewarded you well.
Yeah, very much so. I tell people this too, especially the newer people coming in. There's not a day that I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have gone into a different profession. Or I've always felt like even though I'm not in the clinic anymore, I still feel like at least I'm training the new people that are coming out, that are going out and helping animals, right? So I was always happy. I found it very rewarding to be in this profession for sure.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for listening. If you want to have any ideas or thoughts or questions, just email me at drgvetmedit@vetmedit.com. Talk to you soon.
Right, man. That was pretty good.
Was that fun?
Yeah, it was fun.
Now you see why I'm doing it.
That was
Now
great.
you can put it up on your website.
That's fantastic.
Hey, around we go.